It's not an announcement, it's a comment. Today or tomorrow, rates will be released. So I just want to clarify the same thing that we see on Tuesday. So we have to apply our attendance rule. So it's like our constitution. We have to follow. So which means that if you see that your grades are not the ones that you prefer, please don't be discouraged. It's basically because of the attendance. So because if the data say that you miss more than 25% of the classes, it's mandatory for us to apply the rule. So, but that's something that you can fix very easily. But you can see how you are going in pricing, which is the number that you have to for the assignment. And you start coming to class at the end, you know that you have to come and think. You cannot be asked to 6 classes, which is a lot during the whole semester. So again, if you see that your grade's not the one you expect because of attendance, that is a really easy to fix. Just start on that.
Yeah, don't be fooled by the 6 absences are okay, or because of late, or if you leave early, or if you go to the bathroom and you're gone for a half hour, then you're gonna lose 1/3 of your attendance.
Yeah.
Also, if you're really late, you're absent. Like if you're more than 20 minutes late, you're absent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please come to class, because there are benefits to being present. But counts as your absence.
If you have any other questions about grades, guys, we are here. And my second announcement is that today I will be happy for the next weeks, because today we'll start the work. Yeah.
Start what? Start what? Okay.
Who's fun of the work? Yeah. Are you excited? I am. So can we say that work in class? No, yeah. Not in the morning. We have to play games.
Yeah, they're in like
They're in the studio right now.
like in this
On the TV. I'm okay. I'm Latin American, and this type of guys who can have fun and work and be serious at the same time. This is possible. Huh? We can have in the studio and cheer for your favorite team, and both can have. Okay, so the stage is all yours.
So two topics was talking about like automobility. So we wanted to do a little bit of start off everyone's responding to our question and asking what their main transportation and to the Boston. So pretty heavy emphasis on walking and utilizing the train and public transportation with the quality buses being a little bit lower. So kind of keep these results in mind, and then you could answer
Where's the bike option?
this follow. It's oops,
I
sorry.
see a bike option.
But it's follow. That it's pretty good. So what is like your guys' initial reaction to those two different?
Well, the only thing is that when you're in the city, you really don't need a car. For one, because we have like Green Line right there, Orange Line right there. We have buses running around the city. And also you could walk, because short distances of walk. But for me myself, for example, I live in the middle of nowhere. And you don't have that sort of resources. So you would have to just rely on your car, maybe walking, if possible, but there's not really any bus with rapid transportation if you go further west out of Massachusetts.
Yeah, no, I completely agree because I think Boston is one of the unique places in that sense. Because I myself live in a western city and there's little to absolutely no public transportation, so I rely almost 100% on the car. So I think that tells a lot, like it reveals a lot about like our mode of transportation respond to like those involved with us and that like how we move around the city. Does anybody else have any impressions on the difference in results?
Like it's easier to like take care of a car or like house a car in your hometown and stuff. But when you're at least like the major reason why I don't have my car is that it costs money. Years like a year and stuff like that. So people usually want costs.
Absolutely. It's a thing of barriers for being city business. Speaking of time, obviously it's a lot more density. It's less space. In that way, you have to help with able to stay with one transportation. But also, you have to think about like if every single person in the city only relies on trains and pushing and buses and it's more sustainable for them to like, are they able to source the city or and I know the train is like not going to go to the level and taking sometimes, so that's also one thing. It's their cars.
Yeah, I think like I guess like something that is being realized if it's something like lost to my hometown, it's like freshman year that's out when my friends from home would come visit. Like they take their car at first and like it was so inconvenient to park in the city and like we got a lot of had a lot of trouble and slowly like they like started to kind of learn how to navigate the city by train. And like they all said like we started to see like the environment different and start to like it starts to change the way you see things and think about like transportation completely when it's like it's just like a different flow or motion.
Yeah, so what should we respond in our lecture after this conversation?
Yeah.
And what should we, what idea you can have, you can answer the second one at the end. What ideas you can have for the analysis for Tuesday? Yeah.
So I think some things that we can, the questions that we have and we can start answering are some of the topics that we brought up, like the accessibility of public transportation in comparison to automobility in more rural areas and how we create a more connected and accessible routes of circulation.
What by accessibility you means like physical ones, socioeconomic, let me understand.
So more so like physical, in the terms of like roadways or integrated paths of public transportation.
I got
So like in the meetings, they gave some examples of like dedicated.
That's I contact. Okay, okay, that's a good one. So guys, any other thing that you feel you want to discuss today? We want us to address today, something like some emerging idea that you need to be discussed in this talk. Yeah, very.
maybe more environmental friendly transportations, like riding, skating. There's electric scooters now.
Yeah, okay. It's good. It's not only allocation of transportation, but also quality and design of transportation for everybody. Got that. Got it. What else? That's a good one. Yeah, right.
I think it's also potentially important to address the cultural kind of aspects behind a car. So a lot of people are attached to their cars in this day and age.
Are you attached to your car? I am.
I would say yes. I'm
Okay.
attached.
But why?
Because it's simple and it's reliable and it
Yeah.
can take you anywhere. To me, all forms of auto transportation have some form of limitation. So I think it's important to address that kind of cultural connection to people's cars, not only because, we want to kind of get people to move away from it, but also like even if we create all of these fabulous forms of public transportation and these new ways of integrated systems, how likely are people going to use them?
Yeah, are you talking about the culture of cars?
Culture of cars.
Yeah.
I should talk about that.
Yeah. What else, guys?
And there's lots of questions that you guys ask. Some of them are really great questions. No? But your question is really good, though.
Yeah.
Do you remember your question? I don't remember it. But I remember it was good. Okay, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Do other people have questions? Susanna had a question. Yeah. What did you write about?
I don't remember my question exactly. But it was, I think something about how cities that are already been built, how can they be transformed into more accessible and not just mobile cities? Because there's this talk about mobility versus.
Yeah, like once a city is built, how are you supposed to change how you get around it from what was embedded in the structure of the city, right? The transit mode is embedded in the physical form of the city. Your friends don't let friends try to go against the grain of what's there. I mean, if you're trying to swim to work, it's really hard. Right? It's just really tough. If you love swimming and you believe swimming is the best way to get around, good luck. You've got a really hard time ahead. It's similar if you want to walk in the United States. Go
I
ahead.
also had one when I was doing the discussion as well. It was like, how can cities transition away from automobile dependence in an area where residents currently have few practical alternatives?
Right. It's another way of saying that. A lot of you, especially who read the URI, your question was basically some version of that. Tyrese was getting specific. Do you want to say it?
About the arterial network, that's what you're.
That was your analysis, right?
Yeah, discussion.
Oh, discussion. I see here, I think this is you. Which specific European cities have successfully reduced congestion through connected street grids, transit-oriented development, and what lessons? Is this your question?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. Right.
That's a good one.
So we need to talk about this throughout today. And I'm going to push as many people who can find a way to do it, look at transit-oriented development. That's the thing that we have so much to learn from for Tuesday.
Before we move to the next phase, so I don't know if you are getting what Robert is trying to do, is to introduce your questions that you brought in the discussions into the class. So remember, we have tons of like of slides, like not.
Way too many.
So
Hundreds.
many. So for example, now I know that I have to stop there and I speak about adding more level of details because it's important for you.
Right.
So my point is that the discussion is not a thing for you to fulfill a requirement. Is to come with these questions for the class. So last time, if you have something that you ask yourself in this discussion and you want that to be discussed today, that's the moment. That's the time. Any other one?
And maybe what's the point, this should be part of the task moving forward is identifying key questions and getting it into a what's the point slide.
Yeah, table.
Public transportation, especially in Boston, with a lot of negatives to it. Is there some like changes that need to be made to the transportation?
I didn't have my diagram.
If we're going away from like car and transportation.
Okay. So Robert, I will change my presentation while you're presenting.
Okay. Yeah. We want to point out, okay, thank you. What's the point group? We want to point out a new and improved version of the discussion prompt. Instead of, this is a new assignment. We didn't mean to write it in a way that told you how to write the prompt. And some of the most successful prompts in the discussion assignment have been prompts that deviate wildly from the examples and what we suggest. So we've changed the wording here. We want you to design a prompt to capture the most useful understandings or approaches you can. So this is we're recalibrating to make it more open-ended and to match what you'll be doing in the profession. AI will play a role in some part of your professional life. And this is closer to what AI actually does fairly well. Design the prompt, develop your skills to design prompts so that it extracts the greatest value for you and your team on whatever project you're working with. So we don't know what the prompt should be, but so often the critique of the feedback, the critique of what is produced by AI is, oh, it should have given examples. Well, if you prompt it to give examples, it'll give examples. So it's not AI's fault. Take responsibility for designing a prompt to be effective, to make the best use of AI. Questions about in the assignment? Yep. Okay, if you are someone who looks at the slides that we post to Brightspace, you will notice that there are more slides that I have hidden in this presentation than I have included. I used to teach a class, and the name of that class was Automobility. And we spent a whole semester on this topic. Oh, do you have your little clicker?
Oh, yeah.
I bet that would be useful.
Yeah. That'd be helpful.
So here are the 7 topics. First one, like Uri made this point, this overarching point, that it's not the car, it's this system that our society has embraced. And it matches very, very well our operating approach to the study of architecture of cities. That the architecture of cities, even more than architecture generally, is an instrument of a larger operating system. Without architecture, this larger operating system wouldn't be what it is. And Uri basically reaches the same conclusion, but because he's a really talented sociologist, he associates it with this characteristic of operating systems of autopoiesis. Autopoiesis is the ability of a system to reproduce itself without any external inputs. So biological systems are autopoietic in that they they replicate. Cell replication is the original autopoiesis. Every part of the system is part of the replication that produces the system. And autopoiesis is the characteristic, whether they call it that or not, that's the characteristic that we're so terrified about with AI, is that AI is going to start replicating itself and take over the world is the fear. It's that system characteristic. So it starts with a story. There was a developer in Florida, and he noticed that when people go on vacation, they like to go to Disneyland or other places where cars are, they might use a car to get there, but once they get in there, it's the environment without cars they love. They love to go to Venice, no cars. They love to go to European cities, car light. So when Americans go on vacation, they gravitate to places that are the opposite of their experience at home, which is the public space, the urban realm the public realm is very light on cars and big on vitality and people and shopping and all of that. So he said, hey, architects, he hired Andres Dorani and Elizabeth Plater-Zagbert, and he said, hey, architects, I want you to study these successful vacation destinations and then build a new one to maximize that quality. It should be traditional looking, which is what everyone focuses on. Is, oh, it's all oldie towny and touristic. But that's not the most interesting part of this. They found that if it were legal, first of all, they found out it's not legal to build that type of community because you have minimum setback requirements of zoning rules. You have parking minimums. And so you cannot make a quaint old downtown area to replicate European or American historic small towns because it's not allowed legally. You cannot get a permit to do that. And then even if you could, they found there was no bank that would be willing to finance that kind of a construction because it doesn't fit their financial modeling. So all the forces of the operating system of the United States conspired to make it absolutely impossible to supply the kind of built environments that most Americans prefer when they go on vacation. Similarly, when we look at triple-decker fabrics of New England cities, you say, oh, we should build more triple-deckers. Those mean old developers should start developing the kind of housing that makes our New England towns what they are, triple-deckers. You can't build a triple-decker, even if it were legal, which it's not because of parking requirements. You could not get the financing to build a triple-decker. There is no business model. There's no viable business model for building a triple-decker, except for some of the very clever, creative exceptions to that rule that Wentworth architects have helped to develop future Decker projects. So when you find that something's illegal, you call the architect and you figure out a way to alter in your project to find an opportunity to change how the operating system operates. And maybe you can successfully construct something that breaks the rules that are part of the operating system and thus have an impact on the operating system itself. And so that's kind of just a fundamental attitude of architects that we need in the 21st century. Identify what the forces are in the operating system that keep us from designing what the world needs, and then break the rules. Find a way to break the rules the way the Wentworth triple-decker project does, the way Seaside, Florida does. This was the founding of the Congress for New Urbanism, which unfortunately, because Dwani is such an asshole, would otherwise be a very successful organization, but he makes a habit of alienating everyone who comes into contact with him. Not that I have personal experience. I do. So we keep referring to the slave ship as the primary example of how a piece of architecture constructs a larger operating system that results in a culture. I think because we're in this class, we can now think about this. Automobility is actually, in a way, a much more relevant and a much more vivid and a much more dramatic demonstration of this relationship that we live through every day. This is Houston in the 80s, and this is the outcome. This is one extreme outcome of the operating system, which we have all internalized. Admit it. So the problem, this problem is particularly difficult because it's not out there. It's not General Motors imposing this on us. Actually, it is. It's not the US government subsidizing corporate interests to promote auto. Oh, wait, it is that too. But even without pointing blame at these causes in history for this operating system and its harm, the number one contributor to global climate change is private automobile use. End of sentence. It's us. We know with absolute certainty, with every single driver's license that we get, it certifies our expertise. We know without even thinking about it that when we're in traffic, right? Admit it, when we're in traffic, we know what the solution to this traffic jam is. They need to build another lane, right? Right? Who's with me? It's obvious. Okay, I won't embarrass. We all know it in our bones that that is the solution. And when we're looking for parking, let's admit it, we know in our bones what the solution is. There should be more parking. Here is the outcome of that logic. We have 15% of the ground plane for the buildings that we're going to occupy and use, and 85% of the ground plane is for storing and moving out private automobiles. At the time of this photo, Houston had the worst traffic jams in the world. Maybe Bangkok was soon to follow. But so by the logic of the operating system that we have embedded in our entire beings as US humans, we came up through this operating system. We know that the solution is more parking and more roads. So what's the right ratio? Is it 10% building, 90% automobile infrastructure? Maybe 5% building, 95% automobile infrastructure. The lesson here is, because we're architects, there is something inherently mathematically dysfunctional. Mathematically, there is no way to build your way out of this problem. And yet, it's like breathing to us because we grew up in the United States. Those of us who grew up in the United States, it's like breathing. You might as well be convincing me that I should stop breathing. Or there's an alternative to breathing. Like, how do we move around? So it is embedded in the structures right down. It's not just the external structures. It's embedded in our minds, in our mindset. It's embedded in the way we think and who we are. So it's very difficult to overcome, but that is the job of architects. We need to overcome it in ourselves, and then we need to find ways to help other people overcome it by changing the structures. No time for this. here's a fundamental thing. Who thinks of themselves as an architect who supports sustainable buildings? Or at least doesn't want to support sustainable buildings? So that's great. Now, in the 70s, and you haven't heard of this, even though this was revealed in the 70s, two architects, Peter Calthorpe and Sim van der Ring, looked at a net zero building and compared it with a regular old building in the city. And what they found is you can have a net zero building in a suburban situation. This is a normal building in a suburban situation. This is not a net zero, but a energy efficient building in the suburbs. If you just look at the building, this looks great. And a smaller version of that building in a more compact community, think of Somerville, is even better. And then in Fort Point Channel, you can get really good. This is energy consumption. But then you add in the transportation element and it changes, everything changes. So it turns out that a regular old leaky triple-decker house apartment in Somerville is more efficient by far, or significantly more efficient, even though the building is less efficient. The fact that it's just in Somerville and not in Marlborough makes a huge, actually, this is not fair. I think this is Somerville. So a leaky triple-decker in Somerville is way more efficient than the most efficient building in Marlborough because of the transportation component. So this is something for you to help our colleagues with. When, like, NJ's mission is to say, okay, he stands up and asks the president of Wentworth, yes, the new dorm building is going to be qualify for passive house standards. But what about the embodied energy, the embodied carbon of the construction? And they have no idea what he's talking about. The next question, so that's one revolutionary front. So I hook my arms with NJ, he's here, and I add my part to this. And I go to the sustainability committee of Wentworth. And I say, okay, it's great, the green buildings, thank you very much. Energy consumption, NJ's insisting you also look at embodied consumption. My role here is to say, also look at how people get to campus. What incentive structures can Wentworth produce to reduce the parking and increase other modes of travel? And sorry, that might mean more expensive parking. I know you can't believe how expensive the parking is right now, right? Who's with me? I can't believe how expensive parking is now. Longwood Medical and this education area, it's some of the most valuable land in the country, making it some of the most valuable land in the world. To capture the financial value of a parking space, the price of the parking needs to be $75 a day to capture the value of the land that are sitting on. So how much do you pay a day for parking on campus? $5? You don't, how much? Yeah. I think it comes down to like $5. So those of you who are paying tuition and are not driving, you are subsidizing people who drive to the tune of $70 a day. That would pay for like 30 minutes of class. Okay. How did we get here? So as I zoom through these examples of history, because of this operating theory of course that don't look at just the form of the building, and don't just look at the form of the building and the spaces that it produces and alters around it. Also look one layer further. Look at how the form of the building, spaces around it, and the operating systems within which it sits. Look at the interplay between those three things. That's what we ask you to do in the analysis. And so we're kind of obligated to play by the same rules when we present things like history. So the first point of history, basically, the punchline is that General Motors and other automobile manufacturers said, we need to eliminate the operating system that was the streetcar suburb, the way every city in the world grew and developed between 1890 and 1830. Every city in the world expanded by using streetcar suburb operating system tricks. So it used to be in the Industrial Revolution, the average distance from where I live to where I work is 0.6 miles, 6/10 of a mile. It's about a 15-minute walk from where I live to where I work. That created very, very dark, dank, crowded housing. So to solve that, as we developed the electric streetcar, property developers would purchase the farmland surrounding these cities everywhere in the world. And that farmland, you'd buy the farmland for $1, a lot worth of farmland. You'd buy it for $1. You would build a streetcar, electric streetcar, very expensive. Why would I spend all this money on an expensive electric rail system stretching out from the center of the city? Because when this $1 piece of land, it is connected with a streetcar that can bring me to work in the same half hour that I used to use walking from this very poor housing, all of a sudden that piece of land goes from being worth $1 to being worth $100. So I can afford to spend $17 for this per lot for that streetcar system, because it's going to increase the value of every single lot in the streetcar suburb so much. So transportation systems were originally a strategy for real estate development. And every city in the world expanded in between 1890 and 1930, according to the logic of the streetcar suburb. That's why the Green Line, that's why Boston is Boston, is the Green Line streetcar system produced Dorchester, Roxbury, it produced Brookline, it produced all of these fabrics served by the Green Line. And they were all using this formula. The biggest one in the world, can you guess? Did I hint at it in previous weeks? This is what they look like. Queens, New York. It's got a shopping street with a streetcar and mixed use. So stores on the bottom floor, maybe offices, but maybe apartments on the floors above. So it was mixed use, streetcars, main streets, and then the streetcar would stop at a corner and the walking distance is now about a quarter mile. So that's the geometry and the financing that produced this architecture, physical operating system that is the streetcar suburb. And it's still part of the logic we now call the transit-oriented development. That is what I'm hoping you look at for Tuesday. So here's the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And here's the big one, is Los Angeles. nobody walks in LA, nobody takes mass transit, used to be what we thought. And we had completely forgotten that Los Angeles was once home to the most extensive mass transit network in the world. What happened to it? Freeways. How did the freeways get built? Have you seen this movie?
Ridiculous 45 and 95 and 75 miles an hour.
What are you talking about? There's no road paths through the town.
Not yet. Several months ago, I had the problem to stumble upon a plan of the city council. A construction plan of epic proportions. They are calling it a freeway. Freeway? What the hell's a freeway? 8 lanes of shimmering cement running from here to Pasadena. Smooth, safe, fast. Traffic jams will be a thing of the past. So that's why you killed that people for this freeway? Of course not. You're not vision. I see a place where people get on and off the freeway. On and off. All day, all night. Soon. Where 2,000 once stood will be a street of gas stations.
This wasn't part of the original movie. Couldn't find a clip.
Automobile dealerships and wonderful billboards reaching as far as the eye can see. My God, it'll be beautiful. Come on. Nobody's gonna drive this lousy freeway when they can take a red car for a nickel.
Red car was the streetcar.
I bought the red car so I could dismantle it.
Bought the red car so he could dismantle it. Cartoon, right?
The real overview.
It turns out it's based on a true story.
He was murdered.
What's with Earl?
Toontown is a metaphor for the African American neighborhoods of Los Angeles. People of color.
Rabbit. The red car plot, suburb expansion, urban and political corruption really did happen. In Los Angeles during the 1940s, power and tide teamed up against the Pacific Electric Railway system and fought them out of business. Where the freeway runs in Los Angeles is where the red car used to be. Toward the end of World War II, county and state officials were considering building a network of freeways across the Los Angeles area to accommodate post-war traffic. This seemed necessary since the already decaying public transportation and the automobile infrastructure didn't feel like enough. Simultaneously, the entire railway company was sold to American City Lines Incorporated, which was, in turn, a subsidiary of National City Lines, a holding company that was buying several public transit systems across. Why? Well, you thought that Judge Doom's plan was cartoonish. Just wait until you hear about capitalism. The main investors of National City Lines were Firestone Tire, Standard Oil of California, now Chevron, and General Motors. What do these companies have in common? Los Angeles Railway slowly phased out trolleys, instead favoring buses that were, you guessed it, purchased from the holding company's investors. You see,
So National City Lines, which was a shell company for General Motors, Firestone, as they said, purchased the streetcar systems in 83 towns and cities across the United States. And they, their job was to eliminate those streetcar lines so that buses could come in. And they didn't just eliminate the streetcar lines, they destroyed them so they could never be resuscitated. They spent a fortune pulling the rails out of the asphalt. They spent a fortune, they took all the rail cars and they burned them. They didn't keep them, they just burned them.
Will you stop honking, man? We ain't going nowhere. This is Agony Alley. Morning rush and evening wait.
So, what are the mechanisms by which the automobile companies produced automobile dependency, car dependency? They did it through illegal actions of buying up and destroying streetcar lines. They were found guilty in a court of law, but because the culture was weak, there was no enthusiasm for recovering enough money to rebuild those streetcar lines. Each of the main companies was fined only $5,000, and the officers of those companies were fined $1 each. Shame on you, but let's face it, we want to go with cars. So it was the operating system wiped out these streetcars. The operating system did what it was supposed to do. The judicial system did what it was supposed to do to find them guilty, hold them accountable. But the culture of the sentencing authorities of the courts, the culture, their heart wasn't in it. So we've never heard about it. The money that was recovered is not enough to rebuild all these streetcar lines. So we just move on. We turn the page, and here we are. Now the automobile companies turn their attention to advertising campaigns to win over the hearts and minds of the people of the United States and get them to convince their government leaders to invest in freeways and automobile infrastructure expansion.
What's the citizen gonna do? Don't honk your horn. Raise your voice. Ask for better highways and more parking space. It's your country. Give yourself a green light.
And so we discovered this thing called induced demand. The first freeway in the United States was built between downtown Los Angeles and Pasadena, California, and it was promoted to eliminate traffic congestion for all time, for good. Within a year of opening the Arroyo Seco freeway, the first freeway in the United States, it was jammed up. And so this is the logic of road construction. When you expand the capacity of the road, drivers change their decision-making, and the congestion that was there before almost immediately replicates itself. In a time that's shorter than the construction time, the old traffic is reproduced. And this is discovered decade after decade since the first one, since the 30s. Every decade, we seem to discover this all over again. So how does GM change the cultural attitude? What else do? They use architects. They hire architects to produce a vision for how the future should be. You saw all of this in history too. So I'm just gonna move quickly to someone's interpretation of this whole thing in a documentary. Remember that?
American cities have fundamentally altered how they built themselves over the last 60 years. And to me, the place that it really started was the 1939 World's Fair. And what was the most successful World's Fair in history, the most successful exhibit was one called Futurama.
To help us get a glimpse into the future of this unfinished world of ours, there has been created for the New York World's Fair a thought-provoking exhibit of the developments ahead of us. A living tribute to the American scheme of living. Let's travel into the...
So notice how normal the model looks. Why does this architectural model portray
the future of the city in that distant year 1960?
The world we are now seeing is a vision, an artistic conception which may undergo many changes as it develops into the great realities.
Not so many changes.
And it portrayed
like
a city that was car-driven, lots of open spaces. You could live in the country and drive to your job downtown and you'd have the best of two worlds.
First place, man has begun to win victory.
Suburban splendor and urban excitement. Not coincidentally, Futurama was sponsored by General Motors, and they were promoting what we wanted. And it's my sense that 1939, just before the war, the clouds are looming over Europe. We go off to war, and we have this image that's mulling in our minds, and we come back and we implement Futurama.
15 million GIs came back from the war, clamoring for new homes and a piece of land in the country. Almost overnight, suburbia was born.
So this is where the redlining went into, the impact of redlining went into high gear. That if you were a white man, you qualified for loans and programs sponsored by the government. It made it cheaper to buy a house in the suburbs than it was to rent houses in any city. So you would buy a house in the suburbs and buy a car, and you would end up spending less money than if you stayed in the city and rented. And this was only true if you were a white man. And so there was a concentration of homeownership that we studied last week. But the operating system was more than just housing value. It was also schools. Why did your parents decide to move to the suburbs to raise a family and not stay where they went to college, for example? It's because of the school systems. You will face a similar problem that when it's time for you to have children and you're living in Boston, there's going to be a lot of pressure for you to move out of Boston because the unique way that the United States funds its school systems. The United States is the only country in the world that uses local property taxes to finance public schools. So if you live in a wealthy town, you have funding for your schools. If you live in a not so wealthy town, you have much less funding for your schools. This problem is getting worse and worse and worse. In the United States, other countries don't have this problem. They fund the schools of the province or the nation through national systems that evens out the quality of schools across the landscape. Why would the United States continue to use this system? It has to do with race. Hint, it has to do with race. 1956, the lobbying of something that was invented. The lobbyist was an invention of the automobile industry in 1936. General Motors and other automobile companies formed an association. They collected dues and they hired lawyers and other men in suits to go to move to Washington, D.C. and convince congressmen to support legislation that supports infrastructure development in favor of automobile dependence. 1956, the Interstate Highway Act. And the question is, what happens when the freeway is crossing through the cornfields? What happens when it gets to Chicago or Detroit or Philadelphia or New York? The question was answered, the seed of the answer was planted with Futurama in 1939, General Motors' architect vision. But it was made manifest with Robert Moses' transformation of New York City. There's so much to learn about Robert Moses, one of the best-selling books of all time. The Power Broker has made it back to the bestseller list. This was the Cross Bronx Expressway that cut right through the Bronx. Guess what this area was designated in the redlining maps of New York? It was very expensive to relocate all these people. And so the cheapest way to locate a freeway is just, you choose the route that is the least expensive land. Where's the least expensive land? It has something to do with race and redlining and these communities that were produced by the policies of the United States. Oliver, are you going to do this one on Tuesday?
Possibly.
Okay. Let's talk about Amsterdam. You will go to Amsterdam, because we all do. The answer to Tyrese's question is Amsterdam. What European city offers us a model for the alternative to the operating system that we have embedded in every cell of our body? It's like microplastics. It's in there deep. It's never going away. So you have to work really hard. Here's the story of Amsterdam. Everyone thinks, oh, Amsterdam, it's always been a bicycle utopia. It's never been different than what it is now. Not so fast. So this channel on YouTube
Beautiful Amsterdam.
is a great source
cyclist
of ideas.
Consistently voted best place in the world to get run over by a bicycle by tourists. But it wasn't always this way. In the 1960s, Amsterdam was a car city. The city was sprawling outside of its 19th century boundaries, and the future was the automobile. Bicycles were an old relic of the 20th century, and Americans were ahead of building the cities of the future. So the Dutch looked to America for inspiration. In the 1960s, American planner David Jochen wanted to modernize the city. It was assumed that in a modern city, just like in America, most people would choose to live in the suburbs and commute into the city center by car. So the result was Plan Jokinen, a plan to make Amsterdam easily accessible by car. Plan Jokinen had several aspects that were pretty radical by Dutch standards, but fairly commonplace in America. The single canal was going to be filled in to make a 6-lane highway, forming a ring road around the city center. Access to the ring road would come in from the south and require demolishing the working class neighborhood of De Pijp. These highways would lead to an area of high office towers and form a new central business district, which would require demolishing parts of OFS. It was expected that all visitors to the city center would come in by car, so car parks and taxi centers were planned on the periphery, with monorails connecting the rest of the city. Of course, monorails were not chosen because they were the cheapest or best solution. They were chosen primarily because they were raised up above the street and didn't get in the way of cars. Details.
Okay, I'm gonna cut that short. What this video doesn't cover is how were the Dutch convinced to abandon the automobile dependency. This is a really hard thing to understand because in the United States, we're breaking all records for automobile-related deaths. In every other developed country in the world, the number of automobile-related deaths every year is going down precipitously. The United States is the only country in the world where automobile deaths are going up. Over 40,000 deaths per year at the current rate. What turned the tide in the Netherlands was the death of a 12-year-old girl who was riding her bicycle and a car struck her and she died. That happens every day in the United States, and we blame accidents happen. That is the legal response to pedestrians and bicyclists dying under the wheels of automobiles. Accidents happen. It's part of the operating system. We can't slow down our commute just because we lose a few people. In contrast, one 12-year-old girl died, and that resulted in a movement that changed everything. The nation of the Netherlands aborted the whole automobile dependency thing and went to a car light approach. The image I was hoping would be here is that. Yes. So they used the same kind of demonstration. In fact, here's what a lot of dead bicyclists look like. They demonstrated by having a dive. Here's how the capacity of a street where everyone drives. This is what it looks like. So they did it. This was produced by architects. So here's a bunch of cars. Here's the space between the drivers of those cars. Not very efficient. That gives us a clue as to why Houston looked the way it did in 1982. If you take those same people and you put them in a bus, it looks like that. Huge boost in efficiency. But wait, there's more. What if you took those same people and put them on bicycles? Look, that's how much space it takes. And you can still determine when and where you go. So the freedom of the road. Now, if they're walking, those same people fit on the sidewalk, and you have a 100% increase on the road capacity. There is zero traffic in the street, whereas all the traffic was in the street before. So a very powerful demonstration that architects are still working with. Just last week, so just a few tricks and tools in the slideshow in this section, which I'm not going to present in the interest of time. And then the next section connects us to the American dream overseas. So back 2 weeks ago, these are a bunch of ideas, a bunch of principles. All of them are candidates for analysis. There's 2 videos in here. And then here is the impact of the American dream overseas that brings us back to that weekly.
I would not put that Rotary at all. I
Right.
saw that picture.
So we are still promoting automobile infrastructure construction all over the world with foreign aid. And I was just in Indonesia last month, a place I used to love walking around, bicycling around, meeting people, but not anymore. Get in the car, you put a hood over your head so you don't see what's going on, and you take the hood off your head when you get to where you're going. So that's what's at stake. So the big question is, will your generation, the architects, come up with viable, provocative, thought-provoking alternatives that turn the tide and make it possible for the operating system to actually change as we move forward? That's not the one?
No. So, remember last year we had put, so let's go to
I'll find it.
yeah, it's in the link from Brightspace. Last year we decided to put this.
Is it this one?
Yeah.
That's really right.
Got it.
Okay, guys. So my role today, so I will use the case of Philadelphia to explain how this culture applied to Philadelphia in the past and what they're trying to do today in order to remediate the system. And they are using Paris, some European examples as a case study to remediate that. So probably that will give us a little bit of hope. Obviously, I have to come back to a little bit of the history, and I will try to skip some of the idea that Robert already said. But if you have any doubt and you want us to repeat some of the idea, please raise your hands. So for me, everything began with the modern movement. This is a diagram. You know who is that? Who is Louis Kahn? Who knows who is Louis Kahn? Raise your hand. He's an amazing architect. And he drafted these diagrams that for me represent everything that happened in the overall movement that generates the city that we have. He said that the city is like a house. So then you can divide, if you divide the house between areas to to fun and areas for living and areas to work, the studio, the living and the bedroom and the corridor, you can design the city in the same way. So actually the thing that you're doing in your project in Studio 6 is dividing something that I always criticize. Huh? So my big critiques to the studios in this university is that I don't know for what reason we have like we give so much importance to program. And every student begins the project, designing the program and dividing the box into different square feet in order to respond to the program. And I always say that the program is only one thing out of many that helps us to design. That you can have an amazing building globally that respond to every single program that you have in for the Craigslist house, but you can still have a very bad building who deals very bad with the canal or very bad with the corner. Are you getting me? So the program is just one factor. So this idea that program is that important is something that is embedded in our culture that began with the modern movement. So Lloyd can say that you can divide the city in different programs, and if you divide them, you can split the program in monofunctional areas, and that's also Le Corbusier and also Joseph Serre, all the masters of the modern movement. So you need circulation as a main thing to move around, and because everything is spread out in different programs, and you need to connect with them. So transport, mobility and circulation is so important, and it's not an intuition, that was written. So these are some of the books of this movement. So this is Le Corbusier, Channel Patterns, and this is one of my favorite. This is Joseph Louis Serre in the Congress of Modern Architecture, 1942. Can you see the cover of the book? What do you see there? He says that people live in cities like sardines in can. We are so overcrowded. That's very sad. We cannot be together. So this idea that Robert explained that compact cities provide more ecological friendly environment, Joseph Serre wrote, and he put in the cover that it's very bad. And the solution was in the bottom, the beast highways. So that was basically prescribed. My point is that this is not something that happened. This is something that we designed and happened as well in Philadelphia. So let me give you a little bit of context because I need to explain Philadelphia in detail. Philadelphia is an amazing city. Have you been there, Mike? Yeah. So Philadelphia has streets, a beautiful street network. Like this one, for example, the main ones also have micro networks for neighboring mobility. So that diversity of a grid producing different type of streetscapes happens because William Penn in the 17th century designed this grid with some corridors dividing different areas with main streets and small streets, some of them to connect big areas and some of them to create neighborhoods. So my point is that we will discuss the grid next week. I think it's the next week or the other one. But the grid could be a good thing, but also something that could be challenged. Okay, so in this case, the grid is working very well. But on top of that grid, Louis Kahn, same guy that wrote the project, the drawing that I showed you before, he defined that you have to do a mobility improvement. And he said, oh, forget the streetscape. You have to put some parkings and a big highway surrounding and redesign the city in a very beautiful diagram because it's so beautiful to have a car dominant tool. And also there was in some ways followed that Edmund Baker was some adjustment in 1966. But my point here is a city, as many cities in our country that were redefined and redeveloped in order to introduce a car-dominated culture. So, and we don't have time for this. Yeah, we don't have time for this. And that was something that yeah. So this is from the exhibition of Philadelphia. That is very impressive. They have this big model of the city, and they ask everybody to understand that you can transform big chunks of the city into something where the capacity is removed. You add more parking, you add more towers in the park. So then, if you're not part of the room here, no worries, because you have the suburbs to live in and you have the cars to move around. So this is something that was prescribed, that was by design in cities like Philadelphia. And so if you want to, and basically there is basically a discussion about two different models of mobility. This is not me. This is taken from this website. I invite you to look at that. It's basically a website that calls the real reason you are sitting in traffic.
And there's a video and bright space.
It's a video price of that. I suggest you to read that because that explains very well why we're sitting in traffic. But basically say that they are models. We have one model where you can move quietly, like the original William Penn's with different streetscapes where safety is important. And then we have you move slowly and time is not that important. And that is a type of model, but suddenly in United States, we decided that time is very important because we need to be efficient in order to produce, because this is what the system demands. So when you increase time or give more importance to time, when you give more importance to time, you give more importance to speed, even if you reduce safety. So this is the model we would choose. Time being very fast supposedly is what is the model that we choose, and that's the main value that we are taking from our design of cultures, and that's what's produced these environments where highways are the main tool because we want supposedly to move really fast, and this is for you, highway table.
Yes.
This is a meme from Reddit. I love this one.
Yeah.
So the reason she asked why MBTA is not working, I think the diagram is going very well. They are suggesting how we solve the traffic issues in the United States. It's really easy. You can extend the green line forever. So if we're going from Seattle to San Francisco, it's really easy. You only have to take the train, come to downtown Boston, and take another one to go to San Francisco, and you're in San Francisco. So this is exactly what is happening in Boston. So actually, I live in Cambridge. It's a pain to take the train because if I cross the river really close to Wentworth, if I take the train, I have to take the the red line, go to downtown Boston, answer the downtown Boston, go again for the green line to Wentworth, even if I'm really close, if I have a connection transversally. So basically, the problem with the MBTA is not historic transportation, it's the design is very bad. Period. And I'm talking also only about the engineer of design. I'm talking about, you can also talk about the friendliness of the system, and also the TOD factor of the system. So MBTA is basically a transportation. It's not a transit-oriented development system where you add other layers that help you to design the system. So my point here is that we, because time is more important and supposedly highway will fix all connections easily, we are putting all our efforts in designing good infrastructure for engineering mobility, but also we're putting bad efforts in designing other systems of transportation.
But why do we really need high vehicle speeds in the first place? Well, because we want to get between places in less time. We covered the time already, but let's look at the between places part of this. When we look at the US as a whole, we see lots of low density development. Simply put, density is how close together we build things, whether that be shops, restaurants, or homes. And in the US, things are typically built pretty far apart. The further apart we build things, the more distance we have to travel to get between those places. Therefore, the more we increase the distance between things, the more it's going to increase time to get between those things, unless we increase speed, which of course lowers safety. For the most part, a balance like this is pretty well accepted by society in the US. Less time, more speed, less safety, and more distance between things. And as a result, this is how a lot of the US was built and how it continues to grow in a lot of places. But growth isn't tolerated very well.
Okay, so yeah, actually it's a kind of recap of everything that Robert said, but the contradiction here is that we created highways because we want to save time and to want to move faster. And because we have highways, we are having more distance between spaces. When we are having more time. So in some ways, the paradox here is that the system that the tool that we created to save time are producing more time for us to move. So in that website, they explain that in order to prioritize time and speed, so the road infrastructure costs around 230 billion, if I remember, per year. And they also explain that, and we already discussed that in the first class, the expense that we need to use to have cars and the amount of crashes that we have to expect, the amount of trust that you have to fix because of lack of safety, that means that we have to expend that number $1 billion.
2 trillion.
$2 trillion. $2 trillion. Again, or more details are in that video and in the website. So we are spending that amount of money because of the culture that we are having. And what is happening here, I'm going to come back to the idea of the spatial opportunities, that this money goes to increase road capacity, which also to remediate pollution, to with a lot of use of the land, but nothing is coming to redesigning the area in order to have more spatial opportunity. Well, if we don't prioritize time as we want and prioritize safety, we use the same road capacity to redesign that for a spatial opportunity. And this is something that you will be discussing in your analysis for Tuesday. How we redesign, what example we have to redesign the road capacity in a way that increase the spatial opportunities. You already covered that, Robert, but basically, Robert already gave one idea about how we can make that happen. So, but I want to also add a little additional data that I found in social media, is this one. So this is basically saying that supposedly you increase the roads, and because by increasing the roads, you will reduce traffic. But what is happening at the end, everybody's going to the suburb, to the downtown, and the traffic is still there. So they are proposing why not having other forms of mobility, in redesigning the road capacity with other more forms of transportation that address this increasing of other forms of transportation that have more benefits or more use of the road capacity. But what is really fun for me is how inefficient is the highway system in the US. This is the highway system, one exchange highway in Houston, and this is in the same scale, the size of the center of Siena in Italy. That is impressive. I don't know if you're being in Italy. Are you going to or being here? So in this little town, you have like 5 plazas, 500 restaurants, 6 universities. 6. So you have around 1,000 and something people living there. All of this is, and come on, a lot of people having, having friends, learning, a lot of people having sex, having friends, enjoying. All of this is happening.
Eating good food. Drinking wine.
Yeah, they use the
Sipping
wine.
coffee and
What else? All of this is happening by thousands of people in the same area that you have the highway. Is that fun? I think the contradiction is so evident. The contradiction is so evident.
We had a thesis project where someone wanted to keep the interchange and build a city on top of it in some future scenario. And it was amazing.
Yeah. But again, the city of Siena is that's the same size of the Houston highway interchange. 3,000 people living here. I say 1,000. 3,000 people living. How many people live here? 0. 3,000 versus 0. And probably the same amount of cars. Yeah. Obviously, there are some experiences happening in the US, and this is a suggestion for you to advocate for them. The Highest Speed Rail Act. This is fun because this is the third time that I give this class. This is not the first time that I put this act, but the good news is this was introduced to the House of Representatives last month by Senate's Seth Moulton and Susan Belvedere. So these two senators introduced this act to the House of Representatives. I don't know if we can do something to support it. I'm so new as a citizen here.
We
But-
can call our representatives.
Yeah, my suggestion here, and this is a suggestion, that you can call to your senators and asking them to support this. It is basically a new high-speed rail that remediate the problem of the amount of highway that we have everywhere. So this is being in discussion for a while. There are a lot of representatives that are against that because it's so expensive. The cost is $205 billion. And now there is a call for the senators. They don't want to expend that amount of money, of federal money, into this type of project because they believe that the government should play another role and that should be solved by the private. So actually the current government, I would say that they are against the allocation of federal money into this type of project. And are you in favor or against this? Even if do you think it's a lot of money? It is. It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. Okay, but remember that, huh?
Yeah.
It's a lot of money, yes. But it's nothing compared to the amount of money that we are already spending in this three type of things. So, again, this is a suggestion for us to start promoting this type of project that can start remediating the situation. At the end, we are having a fossil fuels vehicle system. And also, this is another thing that is happening. How we change because this is another comparison that probably challenge also other technologies. Sometimes we believe that with electric cars, we will solve the problem. So this is very similar to what Robert was saying, that if we use the technology to have house zero emission houses, you will solve the problem. Same thing is happening with the car. The individualization of the solution sometimes doesn't provide the solution. So at the end, this is how the city looks like with gas-based cars. This is how the city looks like with electric vehicles. So at the end, the problem is the same, and obviously you have more fossil cars and less with electric cars, but you are not still solving the whole problem if you have more walkable biking and public transit oriented products. So how we can start understanding that we can address mobility, not through the individualization of the solution, but to create transit-oriented development where we collectively can use the city to project through a project like this one. And these are, I don't know who has that. I think was Therese just left. So these are examples in different parts of Northern Europe, and this basically gives you examples for your analysis. So this is because this idea of the car-based design was everywhere. I would say probably the United States was the leader, but that was everywhere because of the modern movement. So in Utrecht, he decided to change the same street to more street-based or walkable or bike-oriented. So they changed the mobility to other places, and you can see that now that when you have the sidewalk, you have a bigger sidewalk plus certain areas for parking. And when you have the car, you have a bike lanes. And obviously, when that happened, all the retail that are at the bottom start selling more because people slow the movement and you have more people to sell. So this is another paradigm that we have to break, is the idea that having less cars will reduce the profit of the retails. Actually, Many examples have demonstrated that is the opposite. This is in Dusseldorf, Germany. So they decided to take the highway away, put some of the street out of the city, increase public transportation mobility, and they have all of these amount of roads for more engagement with the river and more, and obviously this being a low speed have more transversal connection between the water, the park, the new road, the new street, and the buildings. So this is an invitation for you to find examples where less car dominated examples will improve not only the life of the city, but also the amount of people who can engage. So this is a clear demonstration. You can count the amount of people who are here, counting one person per car, and the amount of people that can be here enjoying the water. And more example, this is Vienna. So this is happening everywhere. Also, slowing the speed gave you the possibility to include biofuels in the city to also to remediate or to adapt to climate change and to collect water below. And also something that we will talk in a few weeks is introducing more than humans into the design of the city. This is something that we are not talking as much as we can. So, at the end, in Boston, we only, how many people? 8 million people in Boston? How many people live here?
City of Boston, only 900,000, but greater Boston area, 3 or 4 million.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, the Boston area is 3 or 4 million people, but how many species we have? If we count squirrels, turkeys, what else? Insects, dogs, all of the ecosystems that we need to the world to survive. So this type of design, where you lower the speed, also permits you to have rooms for other guys to live, not only humans. Or also, this is quite evident in Groningen, the way he changed this parking lot into a huge place for engagement. This is 2021. So my point is that the world is doing this change, and this is what Philadelphia tried to address in this design handbook for complete streets. So they were understanding, and coming back to Philadelphia, they understood the damage created by Louis Kahn and Wood Bacon around the city, and the way the streets were dominated by cars. And so the mayor of office created this this complete street design handbook. If you are struggling to find examples for Tuesday, try to find the concept of complete street as the word that we are trying to use. That those street that includes not only cars, but other things happening, including other forms of mobility and all. So they basically make a catalog analyzing the way different streets are car dominated, and they create a complete street handbook. So you can take a look at the handbook and all its technical details in this link below. And basically the principles is to understand that many things can happen in the street. So where you have cars, you cannot have, and remember, when you design a street, that includes at least a little thin border of the space. So this is what defines the street, but also the way you have a different engagement between their facade and the border, pedestrian mobility, the trees, not only for us, but also for other species. Areas for gathering that sometimes you can transform into parking lots. One lane for mobility, sometimes with priority for cars, for emergencies, ambulance, and especially public transportation, bike lines, and you repeat the system. So this is the typical section of the complete street. And what is fun is this piece allows you to have some ecological tools. So you can translate every environmental control action that you are learning in Studio 6 to the street. So, and collecting water, for irrigation and bioswales, across the area. So they have a complete catalog. Again, we have no time for this. So, but they define how you have different elements for pedestrian and buildings. So that between sidewalk, curbs, ramps, but also bicycle parking, streets, trees, and how and where are the conditions that they need to do in order to design that. The reason because I'm spending that amount of time in this is because I truly believe that there is a room, a job market for you in this field. So we have many of our mentors after this class are trying to learn what is happening, and they are advising many mayors and also private companies in order to understand how we increase pedestrian mobility. And you have an architect can do it. Only architects can do this. Architects are the only one who can do this type of things because we are trained to include complexities of different elements all together. So, because what is happening in the history of I don't want to complain to other professions, but what is happening in with highways designs that engineers usually see only one side of the problem. We are capable to overlap different sides of the problem and prioritize them into simple solution. Actually, this is our main job. Having different systems and that complexity is coming together to a simple solution that can address more than one thing together. So this is what this matrix tries to do. This is the solution and plan and how the different elements of design mobility are applied to the site. And something, and you will be designing that in Studio 7. So you will see that sometimes you have the road and sometimes you have this moment which you have to expand the sidewalk to create the transversality, or sometimes you create the spaces for parking. And then you align the streets right there. So taking advantage of this expansion of the street. The process for make this happening, and this is also really beautiful because they are using that through participatory design. And this is something that we will address in a couple of weeks, how we can make the decision making more participative. And that creates a complete system of roads across not only the center of Philadelphia, which was the only area that was addressed by Louis Kahn and Edward Bacon, but of the entire city and suburbs, in order to create different type of complete streets with a lot of details about how this is designed. At the end, the goal is how you can eliminate the culture of car-dominated roads and understand that in the same road capacity, there are a lot of things that can happen if we reimagine the mobility and circulation with another lens. And this is my last slide, just to mention that this is only possible with things in others, not only in us. That's it. So we have what's the point team. So suppose your role is to tell what we need. So you can blame on us. Huh? So what we need, what answers remains open, or why not? What do you think you learn or we added as well, like the main conclusion? And the second part is very important. It's very important. I'm sorry for that, guys. It's important because that will help you to make your cases for the analysis.
Something that I really liked was I had a lot of questions pertaining to the culture behind cars and how we can sort of overcome that. And I appreciate the exploration delving into how when we kind of take away these car-oriented roadways, it's not just replacing it with other forms of transportation, like walking or bike lanes, but it's more of a layered system where experiences can happen. So when you showed that diagram of, all the things of a city that can happen, where this one highway interstate is kind of exploring how we can take advantage of those spaces, not just to create, more sustainable forms of circulation, but also take advantage of the spatial capacity and different experiences that can happen.
I think, not this discussion question, but a question of like the government's role in like the sustainability and formation of these public transit systems, and like their lack or too much input into stuff like this, like the agencies and like you talked about the agencies, LA popped out a little bit, and then it's just a small stop on the wrist. Like, how can the government help transform public transit for good reasons instead of their personal value, their personal gain?
So for me, what I got out of the lecture, in terms of having access to be able to drive a car and be able to travel within like suburban or rural area, it is a nice feature, but at the end of the day, does it guarantee you the freedom to be able to go anywhere? Or actually, I mean, you don't really have a lot of other options, so you're kind of not just encouraged to travel by car, but you're kind of forced to. And there's this kind of like impression that if you're in a suburban or rural area and you tell someone, oh, I'm going to ride my bike or I'm going to walk to a local store or whatever, if you're able to, there's kind of like, you're kind of frowned upon or like looked down upon, and you're kind of questioned, like, why aren't you taking your car, even though it's like a 10 to 15 minute radius you're traveling around your house or your apartment.
I would like to add something that related to the analysis. One slide that I skipped has to do with Jane Jacobs. So Jane Jacobs is going to be an important, it's the reading for the following week. So I'm just going to draw it on the board. The key thing with Jane Jacobs, the key principle that your instructors in Studio 5 talked about. Remember Studio 5? We hope that the most important things you learned in Studio 5 are still with us here in the room. In Studio 5, one of the key things we need you to recall, and then recall it again in Studio 7 and recall it again 20 years ago from now, is Jane Jacobs and her idea of eyes on the street. Remember eyes on the street? Okay. So rather than ending your street section here, understand that because of Jane Jacobs, we understand that what's happening here and what's happening here has a transformative impact on what's happening here. If this ground level is permeable because it's got stores, windows, and doors that come in and out, then this is a completely different place. If there is housing with windows and the lights are on, that transforms this place. When you walk past Tansy Gym, there's no windows. It used to have rows of shrubbery and a chain link fence, and it did not pass the pepper spray test. Have you heard of the pepper spray test?
What is the pepper spray test?
The pepper spray test goes something like this. You're a woman, okay? Are you okay with that? Because we're architects, we have to empathize with all users. step one, you're a woman, your parents sent you to the scary city to go to architecture school. And they love you, so they gave you, they insisted that you have a chain, on your keychain, you have pepper spray, right? Who's with me? Is that true? So you have pepper spray?
I actually own one myself.
Okay. That's smart, right? And so here we are. I'm looking at the analysis. I'm looking at someone's analysis. It's a slightly elevated aerial view of Parker Street. And the person is walking past CEIS. Okay, you can see it because you've been there, right? So you're using the architectural superpower, walking by CEIS. It's getting dark. I'm heading a little, everything's great. But then I cross the pike, and now it's not CEIS, it's Tansy Gym. What just happened? And imagine Tansy Gym in its old state when it had shrubbery and a chain link fence. Right? What do you do? Remember who you are. You're walking, it's getting dark out. You're walking alone. And you're walking past CIS. You cross the pike and you go past Tansy. What happens? Anyone? Yeah.
I put my hand in my pocket, or
Yeah.
pepper spray.
You check for your pepper spray. I love you, Mom and Dad. Thank you so much. Nothing's going to happen. I've done this 100 times, but my spidey sense is tingling. I'm just glad I have the pep. I'm glad it's there, right? Because it only works if you carry it. I won't make you pull it out and show us pepper spray, but your parents want me to do that. So CEIS passes the pepper spray test. I don't care. I'm not thinking about pepper spray. I'm just enjoying my best life. Right? Here I go. Then I go in front of Tansy. Whoop! Where's my pepper spray? Failed. Tansy Gym is architecture that fails the pepper spray test. Your architecture in everything you do needs to pass the pepper spray test. This is a fundamental condition that affects the people we are working for as architects. Who's paying our bills? Yeah. Probably because the old mode of architecture, discipline, and culture is hard to change. In the 20th century, who hired architects? It didn't matter what did we study in architecture school in the 20th century? We studied how to design museums and homes for wealthy people. That's it. Architecture was for this much of society. And all we cared about was who was paying our commission. That was the client. It's probably that white man. I'm going to do whatever he wants because I'm the architect. And that's what we do. No, that's not how it works anymore. We work for everybody. There are people paying our fees. And then there are the thousands, tens of thousands of people who are impacted by our design. The architect of Tansy Gym probably designed it for a campus in Florida. Wentworth bought it for next to nothing and plopped it on Parker Street. That is unethical. That is a failure. It fails not just the client, it fails the thousands and thousands of people who are harmed by the design of Tansy Gym every day, all day long, year in, year out, decade after decade. So the stakeholders of our architecture are not just the clients. Our buildings have to satisfy the needs of the public. We produce the public realm by the buildings we design. And when you keep this in mind in Studio 6, everything has to pass the pepper spray test. Even when you put a loading dock back there in that narrow thing, it has to pass the pepper spray test. Give us some windows. Give us some hope that there's life. There might possibly be someone looking at what's ever happening in the alley. Design as if you are the users, no matter who they are. Questions about this?
That's good. I just want to, we're on time, I want to leave a question open. I agree with everything you said, and thank you for catching that in that diagram.
Yeah.
But Dante says something that is true as well, as so everything that you're describing needs certain level of capacity. It's from proximity. So we can talk about TANSI and CIS because there is certain proximity between the building and the streets that permits this condition of the ice courses. I don't have the answer now, but how we deal that and so, where everything is so spread out, and then you don't have that proximity, or you don't have access 15 minutes walk to a parking to a train station.
So that's a question for Tuesday.
That's a question for Tuesday.
Are there examples that show suburbs that have been designed to address the weaknesses, the problems of suburbs?
And the problems are really clear. It's lack of proximity and a lack of access to system of mobility. They are different than the cars.
And every year in the thesis program, we have a dozen or so students, most of them, half of them at least coming from urbanism, who make this the focus of their thesis work. Very interesting strategies for densifying town centers, even though they were suburbs.
In suburban areas.
In suburban areas.
And you create hybrid city.
Yeah, and how do you make it dense enough in the centers to justify transit? Even if it's bus service. Okay. Time's up.
We are all, yeah, we're done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.